Check, check. All right. Welcome to the first episode, first installment of the motocross / workshop-ish garage build. My fiance and I just bought a house, just moved in. And one of the things I wanted to do is completely finish the finished garage. This might be half finished. I don't know what this is considered. But it's drywalled. It's got the first layer of, or first coat of mud and taping around here. So I'm just going to be finishing it, painting it, adding some cool shop lighting, and making things a little bit more pleasing to the eye. I'm not sure exactly what this first episode is going to entail or what's going to be in it. I think it's going to be a lot of time-lapsing of drywalling. I'm not a drywaller by any means, so none of this is going to be professional or any type of advice. But I am going to show you the progress that I make personally around everything in this garage. It's a 3-car garage. The one-car bay is going to be pretty much strictly motocross and workshop, with half of the second car bay being also part of the workshop, and then the other half of the second car bay is going to be where the fiance parks. So I think this episode is really just going to be all about plans and what it's going to be like going forward, and then probably some time lapses of drywalling or mudding, and then just kind of getting things ready for paint. Maybe some primer will be in this, maybe some paint. I don't know. We'll see how fast we get things done or how long the episode is. But I guess for this first episode.
All right, I was yapping a little bit too much, so we're just going to jump right into this. First and foremost, this is just to portray the idea that I'm going for. On the 1-car bay over here on the left is going to be my setup. Of course, we'll have the bike here in the middle, and then the little workbench that I have will go in there, and then I'm going to get 2 more tool drawers for either side, and then 2 big storage cabinets, as well as some storage cabinets on the top. And then I'm going to get a butcher block to go over all 3 of these drawers for one large workbench area. And then I want to fill the space in here with some metal pegboard, and then probably put a TV in there as well for watching Supercross while I work on the bike, or watching motocross, whatever. So then I can have a little bit of entertainment, or maybe even some YouTube tutorials going while I work on the bike. And then I also want to get a subwoofer and a couple of speakers to hang up here, because I'm a big music guy when I work in the garage, so that'll be really nice to have. And then I'm going to get something so that I can switch between Bluetooth to my phone, and then also have the audio play through the TV as well. So then I can have the best of both worlds, whether I want to listen to music or have the audio play through the TV. And then I have my other wooden workbench over here on the other side for the CNC machine that is part of Peanut Customs, that will be making some products for me. And then any additional stuff over here, I'm not sure yet. There's a lot of space over here I can use, so we'll see what that comes out to be. And then over on the other side, this here is going to be exclusively for the fiance to park, especially in the winters. And then I'll have a bunch of storage over here on the walls for like my ladder, and then some things on the walls for like shovels and rakes and that kind of stuff over here. And then that'll be pretty much it. Of course, I'll have some nice lighting up at the top, to be determined at this point in time as to what that's going to be. But this is just to get a visual as to what I'm going for. And without further ado, let's get into some work. Alright, to get things started, the previous owners had this storage rack mounted on the ceiling. It's ugly, doesn't really do a whole lot for me, so it's gotta go. And sometime down the road, I'll probably end up building my own storage that we could throw bins in and stuff like that. And then the rest of this was pretty much just a bunch of mudding and just getting the first coat of mud over a lot of the drywall tape. And again, this was the first time I had ever really touched any amount of drywall mud outside of some small patches. So you're going to see a lot of flaws probably in my process, but in the end it did end up turning out pretty alright, especially for a garage. And I had to keep my expectations a little bit in check because, again, it's my first time. And it's also a garage, so I'm not really expecting it to be perfect. If this was something that was inside the house, I'd be a little bit more stingy about it, but it was just a garage, and it's going to be all painted pretty dark anyway. And we'll get on to day 2. So day 2 started out with a lot of sanding on the pole sander. I wanted to get that first coat as flat as I could without killing myself over it. and get it prepped for the second coat. Above the garage right here where I'm sanding was a little bit of a pain, especially with the garage hardware being in the way, and it was definitely a pain to mud around there too. So I just tried my best with that. And then ended up starting with the third coat, or well, I guess I did all of the third coats. And like I said, you're going to see a lot of flaws in this process, but it was a bit of a pain on the ceiling. I started with the ceiling, which ended up being a little bit of a mistake. I wish I would have started on the walls, because then the learning curve of mudding would have been a little bit easier and a little bit quicker. But I started with the ceilings because I wanted to get those out of the way, because I knew that I would, or well, I was already dreading them, so I figured I'd just get the hard stuff out of the way. I also had a couple patches I had to patch up here and finish from running some Ethernet cable above the garage. And then this was the third car bay, and working around the garage door hardware was, again, just a massive pain, but we got it done, and my shoulder was dead. And then this is how we were looking at the end of day 2. Did some patching on the drill holes from the storage rack that was mounted on the ceiling. And again, you're probably going to see some areas that aren't super perfect, but a lot of that I was okay with spending a little extra time sanding to fix. And then that'll take us into day 3. Day 3, that started off with getting some more of the first coat of mud on the third car bay and trying to finish up the ceiling as quickly as I could, and then also putting an additional coat on some of the 2 car bay, as you'll see here. And this is how we were looking after all of that. Had some time to dry, and then I was super excited at this point that I was finally able to save my shoulder a little bit and get started on some of the wall. And then this is where I really started to get the hang of it a bit. And again, I wish I started on the walls, so then the learning curve would have been a little bit quicker. But it is what it is, and this is how we were looking at the end of day 3. Just waiting for it all to dry overnight, and then some additional coats, and then I was running out of daylight and running out of time, so we'll finish up the rest of the walls in the next day as well, and probably some additional coats on the ceiling. Forgive me if some of my timeline is a little bit weird in my recollection. I am recording this all after the fact, and I'm just going off the footage I got for the voiceovers as well. So day 4 and 5, I'm just going to combine because I didn't get a whole lot of footage of either. Day 4 was exciting because I was able to finally start sanding, and then I was able to start mudding on the walls as well. And my dad also came down and helped me out a little bit, so you'll see that too. But it started off with the pole sander, and then went into a lot of sponge sanding after that with the sponge blocks. And then, like I said, didn't get a whole lot of footage of that, but this is what it was looking like after the first coat of mud on the walls. So just waiting for that to dry, and then I think I threw one more after this on the walls, and then of course sanded after that. But that's how it was looking. And then on day 5 was a little bit of an additional mudding around some areas that I missed and some other coats, but a lot of sponge sanding. I didn't mind spending a little bit of extra time with the sponge because my mudding in itself was, like I said, pretty flawed. So I put a little bit of extra time in the sponge sander to get it as smooth as I could. And this is how we were looking after a lot of sanding. I also threw on third coats on the walls. As you can see, a lot of it's drying here. But it was turning out pretty good. I was pretty happy with the process and how it was going. Also had to patch up a couple holes on the ceiling there where the previous owners had some hooks for like some bicycle storage. But all in all, it was coming along pretty good, and I think all that was left to do after this was just sand. Not going to bore you with a whole lot of stuff from day 6. It was a lot of rinse and repeat of the same thing over and over and over again with sanding, as many of you know. I would start off with the pole sander to knock down a lot of the big ridges. You can see a lot of them at the top of the screen right now. I was okay with leaving those because it meant that I wasn't scraping the mud too thin above the tape, and I was okay with sanding those out. So I'd start with the pole sander to knock those out, and then go back with the sanding sponge to really refine it and smooth it out and taper out the edges. And same thing with the walls, just pole sander to knock down those big ridges, and then go back with the sanding sponge to really refine it and taper out those edges. So this is how we were looking after all sanding was said and done. Please forgive the camera settings. It was a little bit late in the day, so it's going to look a little grainy and blown out. But you get the point. Sanding was done. This was exciting for me because I was able to move into primer. And then after primer is paint. And then after paint is a lot of the fun stuff. So we'll get right into the next day and start priming. But before I wanted to start primer, I wanted to get some of this floor clean. I tried to just shop vac it, but it wasn't quite strong enough. So I ended up sweeping it all into a pile and then sucking it all up with the shop vac. And that seemed to work just fine, at least for the time being. And then I did a quick wipe with a very damp mop to get a lot of that dust off of the ceiling and the walls in the first car bay, or the one car bay. And then it was time to start primer. So I went through a lot of the edges with a brush and got the primer on there. I'm just gonna roll the primer and then I'm gonna spray the paint. And the reason for that is because the paint sprayer that I have, which is another Amazon special, can't handle the thickness of the primer. So I'm just gonna roll the primer like I said, and then I don't have to back roll the paint, which will be nice once I get to paint. So I got the one car bay edged with the brush and the ceiling done as well, and then we'll be finishing up the walls of the one car bay in the following day. So again, day 8, big day for me. This is where you get to see the most progress the quickest. And you can see the primer lays on pretty thin, and this is something that was new to me. I've never primered just drywall before. And then once it dries, it dries pretty white. And I was pretty surprised on how white it dried. Then I went ahead and mopped the 2-car bay. A lot of these are going to be pretty short days because they were after work, so I didn't have a whole lot of time. But this is how just one coat of primer looks on the 1-car bay. And then the 2-car bay had been mopped and is now ready for its own coat of primer. This one we're going to combine day 9 and 10. Again, some of these were after work, so they were pretty short days, so not a whole lot happened and not a whole lot of filling happened, but this was exciting again. Was able to start the 2-car bay, again got all the corners and the edges edged, and then was able to start rolling. Started off above the garage door and then started rolling the ceiling. I started off rolling everything with the roller on a pole, and I realized shortly that that was not the way to go. That was tearing up my shoulder, so I found taking the roller off the pole and then rolling in front of me and above my head was a lot better on my shoulders than with the pole. But the pole did come in handy and was very helpful and useful on the walls, of course. Got the walls all done. Forgive the lighting in this, there was a storm going through, so you'll see it changing a lot. And then this is how she's looking after all her coats of primer. Like I said, most of this has 2 coats. There were a couple areas I was able to get away with 1 coat, but about 90% of this all is 2 coats of primer. And I was pretty happy with how it was looking and how it came out, and then really excited because now we can get into painting.
All right, I got to the end of editing this video and I realized I didn't have a way to close it. So here's me in the future framing the camera so I don't reveal too much because I'm about 2 weeks ahead of the part that you're viewing right now. So if you want to see how the garage turns out, which honestly turns out pretty good, I mean, I'm still not done with it yet, then subscribe, like the video, so you can follow along for the other parts that are coming up. And then coming up in part 2 is going to be all the painting, hanging some lighting, which is what's above you right now, and then getting some cabinets together, drawers together, positioning those in the garage how I want them to be, and that's about where I'm at right now. I'm not sure what else the part's going to include. We'll see again how long it is and how much I get done, but the fun stuff's coming up, so subscribe and look out for part 2.